Hello and welcome to Roll on the Adventure, the podcast where we create, play, and then destroy our own role-playing games. We've just got finished with destroying Polisurgy. I don't know if it was raising Polisurgy. It's got to be a better city-based analogy than city-specific verb.
Developing.
Gentrifying.
Yeah.
Some word for.
Yeah. Either way, we have made. I think we've made some quite interesting progress on a lot of the ideas there. Do you think?
Yeah, I think so.
So, on to more ideas. Cue the intro.
Roll
on
the adventure. Okay, it wasn't as bad, I guess.
I mean, you were expecting it this time.
I'm banning the recorder from any future episodes.
It's a lot harder to harmonise or whatever with a recorder than with other voices.
Because the recorder's like going one time signature, we're going another time signature, and we're also both out of tune. So it's just like, no.
Yeah.
The recorder's not out of tune.
It's a recorder. All recorders are out of tune. That's just a rule.
Is that how it works?
Why do you think no one that's like aged older than like 10 plays a recorder? I don't know about you, but I've never seen anyone go to an orchestra and play a recorder. Anyway, my hatred of recorders beside.
It's a much maligned instrument.
It deserves it. Anyway, right, so the first thing I guess would be to talk about any projects we're doing as DMs, as players, and anything else. What are you guys doing in a moment?
Well, I've got my 2 home campaigns. My exotic game is finally kicking into the city building arc that they've been waiting for 2 years.
Wow.
So
we make them play Polisurgy for a couple of months.
And my Monster Hunter game is on its 2nd arc now, which is nice. They are hunting their second
you actually got
monster.
that up and running.
Yeah, it's been really fun. So they're hunting their 2nd monster, which is a strange undead sort of spider plant that lives... I'm thinking like how much I can give away, because I think one of the players might listen to this.
Might actually listen.
I'm trying to remember if the end of the arc is before this goes out. I think we're safe. So yeah, there's this giant spider plant that kind of infests living creatures and then makes them part of its body so it can move around.
Oh.
And that's currently what they're tracking.
That's pretty cool.
They've worked out a good chunk of it. I can't remember if I told everyone about the Stag of Ganorn, which is the previous monster they hunted, which was a great majestic stag, the heraldry animal of this region, and a bunch of knights were causing it to go out at night and eat people using like magical chanting. And that was really fun. It basically ended with the king of the nation kind of traveling up the road to where they'd killed this stag that was being set loose to go kill him. And they kind of got discovered having killed this thing. And then they were like, we can explain. And that's where we went cut to black, basically.
Oh, nice.
That was the end of the arc. You know, they got out of it, but
that sounds really interesting.
But yeah, the system is working out really well. It's 3 sessions of tracking to 1 session of hunting.
What system are you using?
It's very intentionally done that way. It's a custom system. So monsters are assembled as massive pools of dice. And the idea is that the investigation that you're doing reduces that dice pool. It means it can't surprise you.
Or you know something about it, yeah.
Yeah, well, its dice represent surprises. So if you know a lot about its movement, it can no longer use bonus movement dice to surprise you. Or it's not as many. And there's like a rage mode mechanic, a couple of other things that... So it's effectively a monster as a heist. You're setting everything in your favour so you can get to this thing before it kills you.
That makes sense as a gameplay loop.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's a long gameplay loop. It's working out quite well. I did have a player who joined for this arc leave because he didn't gel with him. Like the whole, it's kind of undirected. You're doing science. You're coming up with hypotheses and putting them into like testing them and using that information to your advantage. And it didn't really kind of land for him. But I think that's because I gave a lot more clues in the first arc, and the reason that my other players are getting it is because they did the first arc. Do you get me?
Yeah, no, I get that.
Mm-hmm.
So they had a far easier introduction.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
So coming up to session 3, they have a load of hypotheses they want to test. They're going to be basically coming up with ways to experiment and things to test, and they'll be doing that in the next session. So that's been really fun. What about, is anyone else running anything at the moment?
Well, I know I'm running some stuff. Chris, are you doing anything?
Not running anything right at the moment. Probably be, from the current votes, I'm currently supposed to be probably doing a Bloodborne-inspired D&D 5th ed game sometime over the summer, which should be interesting.
That sounds super cool.
Yeah, so I'm going to probably run it where basically there's more of a ticking clock aspect. So if you die, things in the world can change and so forth, but you just come back, and fairly limited in, like, instead of having magical swords and things, it'll be able to apply. You'll be able to find potions and oils and so forth you can apply to your weapons. So you can have magical weapons, but fundamentally for a fight. And also just an excuse to go, this is way above your encounter level. This is kind of your problem. Deal with it.
I like that sort of thing, though.
And let the players start using all of the full-on combat engine stuff in 5th ed, all the tactical movement and trying to throw people off cliffs and that kind of thing.
Nice. I mean, there is a lot there that doesn't get used.
Yeah.
Not a huge amount. It's not, but at least it's not being used because it's utterly terrible, like Pathfinders.
There's quite a lot of odd little things you can do that make sense and can sometimes be useful.
Yeah.
It's just everyone involved needs to actually remember they're there rather than... It's like a lot of the various vision and mobility rules. You get a couple of monsters that use them, but they're very easy to just forget they exist as options.
Yeah.
So it's trying to get players in the habit of, I'm going to try and knock it over to give advantage to somebody else so they can wail on it or something.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a thing. Players do tend to forget sometimes with games and systems is that element, especially because when you can't see it. I, as a player, basically got taught very early on to ask, like, what's the area look like? Because I'm the kind of person who likes creativity kills. So, like, if there's a chandelier, I'm darn well going to use the chandelier.
Battle Master Archer, that's where it's at.
Nice.
Yeah, Battle Master Archer, and you just shoot people from across the map and then, like, stagger them and stuff so everyone else can take them out. It's great.
That's cool.
It's also just remembering there's things like force movement rules to drag people around, rather than just narrative.
You can't throw people off cliffs with the normal one, though. I believe the normal force movement rules, unless you've got anything specifically saying otherwise, you can't actually knock people off cliffs.
Yeah.
It's it doesn't make sense. But I mean, if you're doing a game based on a game series where being knocked off cliffs by skeletons is a big thing, then you should probably just revisit that rule. Yeah,
it will just be if you can get basically mobility kills both ways. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that goes.
Oh, that sounds really cool.
Yeah, it definitely sounds cool. Well, recently I'm still running my superhero game, Action Faction, and I know that Yeah, it's silly because basically, one of my friends, Scott Harris, made a superhero universe because he is a massive superhero nerd. He really loves them. And he made a superhero team called Danger Watch. Essentially, we got to create the team name, and we had
Danger Watch.
yeah, it's pretty cool, right? And then we had this leftover name because we had a bunch of names we could have chosen from, and one of them was Action Faction. So originally, it was literally a one shot I created called Sparks of an Electrode, which I made, I think, literally for Alcon for you 1 year because you were like, I want someone to make one shots. One of them is superheroes. And I was like, okay, I'll make something. And so I made that. And I never got to play it at Alcon, but I got to play it with them. And they were like, let's make this a campaign. And so I was drug into making it an entire campaign, which has now been going on with massive hiatus gaps because university for about a year now, about almost going to a year and a half. We're now actually in the final stretch. They've started a finale. No, literally started a finale.
Actually going to end?
Yeah, because I'm one of those people. When I first started learning how RPGs worked, we kind of worked on a never-ending story kind of logic, where you went on quest on quest on quest. But the problem was with that was it would fade out and die eventually because people would get bored or things would change. So ever since then, ever since then, all my RPGs have been directed around a plot, with the idea that they will end. And so this is now getting towards what I have, written in as the end of the story.
Yeah, that's cool. It's just because it just feels bad when a campaign peters out, doesn't it?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, it's nice to at least have some conclusion.
But I know none of them listen to this podcast, so I can spill the beans on what the sort of ending is.
Away.
Basically, spoil away. Basically, they're fighting this alien from another planet whose name is the Mistress / Unity, whose basic concept is that, she takes over the minds of other people and conforms them to her. Like she's the ideal of Unity. And so she's basically
character from Rick and Morty.
Every time I say the name Unity, people say it's Rick and Morty, and I can't exactly deny that character was an inspiration, but it's all because I have no idea what name to give this person that wasn't just a bunch of random alien words stuck together.
The ball?
Maybe, but
I just think of the Technopath from Sentinels of the Multiverse.
There's definitely like a lot of comparisons to what this thing is, because fair enough.
Like the hive mind thing is fun though. Like it's nice and alien in a way that like it's not too alien that you can't even try talk to it, but it is fundamentally alien and a threat. So it's kind of interesting. Like I think that's why it works as a like as an antagonist or as a way of showing how disconnected from humanity a character is.
Oh, definitely, because the backstory of the Mistress, as I prefer to call her, because that's a better name in Unity, is that she came from a planet where essentially people got so advanced they decided as an experiment to create a bunch of robots, each of which had basically distilled purity of a certain type of thing, so a certain type of human emotion or motivation.
Ooh.
So like there was one for war, there was one for unity, there was one for greed, and then there was one for like regret and various others. And the thing is, Unity basically broke the chains of her programming and took over the entire world, and eventually ended up destroying it. And so she got rocketed off that planet and basically fell to Earth. And now she's trying to do the same thing again. So that's basically like the long and short of her backstory. But the players seem to be having a good time. There was a couple of road bumps because this is only my second campaign I've ever DM'd in my quite a few years of playing, but very few years of DMing. And as far as I'm concerned, the first rule is, did you have fun? Everything else is conditional. So that's going to be ending soon, and after that, I'm planning to take a little bit of a break, and then we'll be moving into a space game.
Space game?
Yep, because I tend to do that. I like different genres of stuff. So this one's called Nemesis 2600, and it's based on the Stars Without Numbers system, whereas the Action Faction game is based on the Fate Accelerated system.
What system is that?
Stars Without Number, you never heard of it?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to be using that one. I'm making a bunch of alien races for it, most of which are non-humanoid. So it's a very interesting idea to try and build around. And we'll see how that goes, because I tend to like homebrew systems. One of these days I want to actually do a proper, like, already having been written adventure, rather than me just jumping in headfirst and doing homebrew all the way, all the time.
Homebrew's fun, though.
It's super fun. But yeah, that's sort of my stuff. I'm going to UK Gaming Expo towards the end of May.
Yeah,
I'll see you guys there.
You might see me, you might not, because I'm there from Friday till Sunday, but I'm literally doing 6 RPGs in those 3 days. So 24 hours of RPGs. Yeah, 24 hours of RPGs in a single weekend.
Okay.
So how many of those have you signed up to that are mine?
1.
Which one is it? Nobilis?
I think it's Nobilis one is the one I signed, because I didn't want to go to your microscope one, because I was so worried I'd actually derail it massively again.
Don't worry about it. It happens.
Yeah, I mean, I'm interested to see what happens with your microscope game this time, but so I'm doing that, doing a couple of D&D 5e things there, and then I'm also graduating university in the next couple of months, so that will massively affect my schedule in terms of like jobs and other things. But RPGs are my passion project, so I'm determined to keep doing them for as long as I'm alive, basically.
Awesome. Chris?
So yeah, going to UK Games Expo again. Not got any RPGs scheduled. Probably be spending most of it wandering around with various friends.
Should come play Nobilis.
Wasn't your last Nobilis game one you described as people sat on the beach and felt sad?
That wasn't the last one. That was the one. People got melancholy and there was vampires in the last one. It wasn't quite as sad. There was a bit more action. There was some sadness. There were touching moments under a full moon, being led by a wolf to caverns where nothing ever emerges.
Okay.
See now you know why I'm interested to play your game, but it's going to be very, very weird.
Yeah, I do like games where the PCs basically sit around and cry.
I'll keep that in mind and completely ignore that.
I mean, it's not so much like that is all I want. It's just setting yourself up as an action hero is not really what we're after.
I do kind of enjoy games that are more than just you're a bunch of people, you're going to go and fight some stuff. Just because that's what most games are like, and it's not bad as such. I've just done a hell of a lot of that over the years, so it's nice to...
Yeah, I guess it's... I do agree. I'm getting to the stage now where I've played quite a lot of, we're the heroes, blah, blah, blah. I really love games where there's character development, like character flaw and stuff like that. I'm really interested in doing more of that.
I mean, in Nobilis, you're technically the hero.
Yeah.
One of the guys at
you ask.
But yeah.
One of the guys at Roleplay Club is wanting to run a Powered by the Apocalypse game that's based off Spanish style telenovelas. So instead of
that could be
which sounds quite entertaining. Just for no actual possibly some low key writing stuff, but basically just all romance drama, full on. You are my lover's cousin's brother's sister.
I mean, this could work really well, but I think it really depends on if your players are playing it disconnected or they're playing it getting into the role, because it's easy to do that in the same way as, say, Cthulhu by Numbers, where you're your character is going insane, haha, lol, but you're not feeling it. You know what I mean? Like, you ramp up the drama in the telenovela game, but it's drama you're watching at a distance. Whereas, like, that for me, it can be fun, but it's not what I'm after doing with like some of the stuff that I run. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, because PBTA I always find very hit and miss. When it works, it all clicks together and it's great. But when it doesn't, it's like you're just trying to use your slightly weirdly defined skill list to actually interact with the game engine at all, in between ideally trying to get away with as much as possible without actually using your moves, because every time you use your moves, you have a chance of screwing yourself over.
Yeah.
So when it works, it's really good. When it doesn't, it just becomes this weird exercise in trying to avoid actually playing the game.
It's metagaming to GM, basically.
To a large degree, yeah. On a vaguely related note, I was in a game of Spire that recently finished. Your drow revolutionaries in a city ruled by high elves who need to go down. So you're basically drow terrorists. Yes.
Yeah.
So it's
I've heard some great stuff about that.
The game and setting and stuff is really good. It's just a similar-ish thing to Powered by the Apocalypse, where every time you roll the dice, if on a bad roll you take damage, or damage to various damage tracks, or like money or whatever. I basically had a starting level power, which was if I spend 5 to 10 minutes with representatives of an organization, I can convince that organization something is true until conclusively proven otherwise, which is abusively broken for a starting level power. And also just meant I spent as much of the game as possible not rolling dice because there was a chance of killing myself. It was like we had the police show up at one point and I just went, I persuade the police we've not done anything because there's no actual evidence we have. So it's a good game. There's the artwork and setting is really nice.
Yeah, I've seen some of the art.
I suspect you'd get on quite well with it. The guy that was running it for me is a bit more old school and not quite as able to roll with the players suddenly tangenting off and so forth. It was still a good game, but I think it would definitely be better suited to a GM such as yourself.
Yeah, I've heard some really good stuff about it. I've seen the physical book as well. It looks amazing.
Okay, so I guess talking about maybe some tabletop gaming news would be good.
Yeah, I'll just miss what I'm doing at Games Expo.
Makes sense. So one thing I've heard about recently, though I've not played the system myself, I've heard it's quite popular in gaming space. Big Eye Small Mouth is getting a new edition. I believe its 4th edition is coming out. And apparently there's some stirrings about it as well, though I'm not particularly sure why. I'm not very keyed into that community.
Well, there's a couple of things that apparently the guy who's doing the new version basically bailed on a load of freelancers without paying them.
Besem 3rd edition,
when it went
basically, I think because White Wolf acquired the license and basically out of the goodness of their hearts produced to shed most of the physical copies that were produced were by them going, people have paid for this and we feel we should fulfill the contract even though legally it's nothing to do with us. Because there weren't actually many physical copies of 3rd Ed printed until it went print on demand relatively recently.
Yeah. Also, 3rd was it was basically kind of like GURPS.
It was a fairly generic points buy system that happened to have some anime flavoring on top. Yeah, it didn't do anything particularly special or unique.
It did have a couple of nice things like the power scaling, stuff like that, but it was just anime is not a genre, and it was trying to do anime as a genre, and this is the problem that basically every anime game has.
Yeah, anime is not a genre; it's a medium.
It had like a couple of charts for if you're in this genre, here are some suggested skill costs. So,
Yeah,
like if you're in a mecha game, pilot, mech piloting and guns are more expensive. Cookery is dirt cheap. If you're in a
yeah,
school romance, cookery's quite expensive because it's a useful skill, whereas gunnery doesn't actually come up much, so it's dirt cheap. That kind of
yeah.
thing.
It was, let's say, it was trying to do a generic system for something that is not a genre and thus does not have this. It does not have the same shared assumptions that an actual genre does. Does that make sense?
I mean, one of the issues. So this is an interesting idea of genres and having shared assumptions. While a lot of them do have, I do agree. Like if you're playing, for instance, a Wild West game or like a superhero game, there are certain assumptions you have in there.
Hmm.
It can change dramatically based on your background within that certain thing. So, while me and the players in my superhero game agree on a lot of things, I come out from the basis of the Marvel Cinematic Universe because that's obviously my background in superheroes. Whereas some of the other players come at it from the Silver Age, Golden Age comics, and how those are themed. So it's a
Yeah.
very interesting idea that my tone, or especially tone, is something where people can disagree massively on how something works. But yeah, I'd agree with anime because anime isn't a genre; it's a medium. Anime is just animation.
I disagree. I think it's kind of like a meta genre almost. It's an
Yeah,
umbrella. It's an umbrella term for a load of shared features and context that are spread off through examples of a lot of media and a lot of
there's
genres.
some things in there that you can kind of go, this is generically anime. Probably a
Like there
bit
are
less
games that
so.
you can say are anime effectively
Yeah,
that fit under that meta genre.
probably a
Um,
bit less so now than kind of 10, 15 years ago where less stuff got translated basically.
yeah,
But
Ten
yeah,
Mantra
there's still a
Zero
core.
is an anime game,
Very much so, yeah.
but it's not trying to. It doesn't sell itself as anime. It just does a lot of the things that turn up in anime. A lot of those.
I'd imagine because it is actually a Japanese game, so it's probably written by Japanese writers basically feeding off Japanese pop culture in much the
Yeah,
same way. So it's basically got ninjas as more or less superheroes that ninja magic can do whatever random crap it needs to. It doesn't have any underlying rules. But
yeah,
yeah,
no, I can see that.
superheroes are kind of a bit similar in that, as you say, there's lots of different things you can do. We could do a Black Widow superhero type game where it's basically Cold War
Hmm.
spy stuff with superpowers. You could
Hmm.
have a high school rom com that's that plus superpowers. If you just say it's a superhero game, as it sounds like you've experienced, people can legitimately turn up with massively different expectations.
I think there's a
Yeah,
difference between superheroes and superpowers in as
Yes,
like
that's
the
also
genre
true.
because like your sort of your superpower games kind of they blur together with something like the like teen fantasy sort of werewolf vampire sort of stuff where
yeah, that's
you
true.
have something that makes you different but you're still trying to live your school life and that's different to the X-Men where they are a superhero team first and
Mm.
school kids second, you know.
Or yeah, occasionally have things on the side. Yeah,
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. I mean, that's just like most of the time you don't have, while people tend to say it's one genre for
Yeah.
simplicity's sake, a lot of the time it is just it isn't a mix of genres. Like even, D&D, you could say is fantasy plus something else, dependent on
or
what you've chosen to do.
you can go all the way from down dirty.
D&D is D&D fantasy. That's its genre. It's carved out
Yeah,
space to have a genre now.
You can still run it in quite different ways, all the way from kind of Tucker's Kobold style, down and dirty, fighting horrible monsters in
not
pits.
like to run Tucker's Kobold in 5e. I don't think it lends itself to it well.
It's still a game mode you can kind of do it, or because you can also go for more of the standard, your fantasy heroes, you bash monsters, or you can go dungeon punk, and it's kind of a job.
Yeah.
It's kind of, it tends to be a bit less explicit because, as you say, D&D, especially 5e, tends to have a fair amount built in. But
it's got that heroic nature built in for a start, which, you know,
yeah,
3 didn't really in the same way. Like a level 1 wizard in 5th ed is pretty badass.
They can take a bit of a kicking. They're not likely to die or they're less likely to die to a random cat breathing on them. Yeah.
But yeah, no, I mean, systems are weird stuff again, obviously, depending on what you do. But I think moving on to the next piece of recent news, and in fact, it's a good thing you brought up D&D 5e because this is referring to something in D&D 5e. The new Artificer class has been confirmed for the Unearthed Arcana expansion of D&D 5e. I think it was about a month or so ago it was officially published. I think the Artificer was a class in 3rd edition. And it's only recently been ported.
3.5, I think.
Yeah, 3.5, and I think it was only recently ported over to 5e. And I'm a big fan of it. I really love the idea of magic items and making magic items and doing a bunch of weird and wonderful stuff. That's honestly like my favorite thing, both when I'm DMing and when I'm playing, is just doing weird and wonderful stuff.
So if it's the one that I read, is this where you have a load of slots and you effectively create an item that fits that slot and has this power, and then you can then use that power, and then when you want to build a new item, you have to get rid of whatever's in that slot and replace it?
Maybe it does seem that when I looked it up, because I looked it up to try and make a character for it, and recently there's been a bunch of stuff going on through the internet that, you used to have all those wikis that had all the class stuff for every single class in every single book.
Yeah.
And you could just go onto them and find them. And recently, I think Wizards of the Coast have gone through them and essentially have said, okay, delete all the ones except the base ones, and essentially give them a link to go and buy the thing, which is fair enough. I want to support the industry. I think some of them are like you can build like Wondrous Invention is a thing, where you can build something of a certain level item depending on what class, depending on what level you are. So the one I'm reading is the playtest rules. There is different depending on what you're looking at. So like if you're 2nd level, you can build a bag of holding, sending stones, goggles of night.
2016 version.
That might be the case. Oh yeah, it's a 2016 version, isn't it? So I think that's the playtest, because I know the one I looked at when I was building a character, and I think that was on the D&D Beyond site, was you could specialize into being an artillerist, and you could also specialize into being some other class which I think dealt with more alchemy. You could become an alchemist or an artillerist. And I think the alchemist, you got a small, like, tiny golem that would come around and do various things. And if you're not an artillerist, tiny golem. And with a artillerist, you got a essentially turret.
Oh, it's alchemist and gunsmith. What I've got here.
Yeah, it might be different. Because I sadly do not have the book for this currently.
The UA one's up on their website.
Yeah, that's it. I think that's the one. It seems a lot of people have actually just homebrewed an Artificer, which is not helped finding it any easier. But I don't know. I really like the idea of the Artificer. Magic items are one of my favorite things in D&D. And
you only seem to get a couple of them from your Wondrous Item ability. Most of them are just class features that you get.
Yeah. I swear, like there was something that allowed you to create like custom magic items, which is the thing I would find interesting about playing about playing a artificer is the idea that you can create your thing with your own effects.
Yeah.
Because one of the problems I find with quite a few D&D games is the idea that people only tend to get a drip feed of magic items because, magic items are meant to be rare, which makes sense to a certain extent because, yeah, they are meant to be rare, they're magic items. But that usually means you only get certain standard ones a lot of the time, unless you're playing for a long time. So, like Bag of Holding, +1 armor, +1 weapon.
Bag of Holding is not a bad item, though. There is so much you can do with that that's so
They're
interesting.
not bad, but then when you compare it to something like, so Pathfinder had some of the most fun magic items I can remember, one of which was, I think they're called feather tokens, where you have a feather token.
Feather tokens.
That's it. And dependent on what those feather tokens were, they would spawn something when you threw them. So, like, one would spawn a tree, for example.
Yeah.
And
the Bag of Holding, I'd say, lends itself to that very much so.
Not in necessarily the same way.
You get to do some very interesting things with it.
The Bag of Holding is the Bag of Holding is versatile. I will give you that. Like, the Bag of Holding is versatile, but the idea is less versatility and more creativity through specificity. So,
I get you.
If I give, so for instance, in a one shot I did recently, I found this list called, I think it's like 100 weird magic items. And literally they got to a store and I gave them a bunch of weird magic items because, I could, and it was a one shot. And one of them got something called a toy boat, which literally the idea was it's a toy boat, except when it gets wet and then it becomes an actual boat.
Oh god, did they put it in a glass of water and drop it on someone by any chance?
Well, no. One of them got trapped in ice and then defrosted. And then one of the other players reminded me, oh wait, doesn't that person have the boat and therefore they're wet? And so we were like, oh no.
Did they get telefragged by a boat?
Well, considering they were underground at the time in a very narrow system of tunnels, and then suddenly there's a boat, we're just like, oh. Like that's the kind of thing I love. I love people doing weird thing with magic items, and so having versatility is one thing. I agree, certainly, but having specificity and then doing something really creative with that is something different, and that's the kind of thing I love. It's the chandelier of board games to me.
See, I just actually roll on the random treasure tables, and that's what the characters get if they get a random magical weapon that none of them have proficiency in, then nah.
See, I don't like that, 'cause it's like, yeah, you've got an awesome thing, pity it's crap for you.
They tend to find at least one or two magical items most session, but a lot of them are random potions or oils and things. So
they're more like they get a lot of them, but most of them are useless.
Well, they're not useless, but they're not. It's not sort of, oh, you're level 5, all of you have a level 1, a +1 weapon of your thing. So
there's some constructs we could use to make better loot tables, certainly.
I think it depends. Like, so if you look it up, in terms of like how loot is meant to work in the games, there's some good guidelines for how stuff works, but it does leave a lot up to you in terms of what you want to do.
I'm not personally a great fan of the kind of you're level X, therefore you should all have +1 armor, +1 weapon, at least a +1 item to your core stat, etc., where fundamentally everyone works out more or less the same.
5, you get 4 rolls on your weird shit table that I've written for you.
Yeah, it's just when it's kind of everyone is expected or assumed to have more or less the same things, it ends up being a bit bland.
I mean, in theory, that's for balancing reasons. But that also assumes that D&D 5's challenge rating system is not crap.
It is crap. Recently I was playing as a Goliath Barbarian in a D&D 5 game called Titans of Elabrith, which was a homebrew setting.
Cool.
And so usually I hate the idea of people rolling dice for stats. Like, to me, that's just a terrible idea.
I hate that.
Turns out this turned out really well for everyone because everyone rolled at least 118. So we were like level 3, and like I had 20 strength. I had the maximum amount of strength on a 3rd level character. And it was crazy fun because, you know, he was a Goliath and he could legitimately tear a suit of armor in half because he could just do that.
That's cool.
And partway through that game, I think by around the time we got to level 5, we basically each got a cursed magic item that we could choose. So we got like a lump of them, and then basically, you know, my guy had a massive battle axe. And so he went for the massive battle axe, which turned out to be basically a bloodthirsty axe of evil. That if he got a crit on it, it would give him 10 extra temporary hit points. But it was like nebulously evil, so he didn't know if it'd just do something eventually and like cause him to go on a rampage.
It's like, do you know what it does on a 1? Well, I'm not telling you.
Yeah, we were. Sadly, the campaign killed itself before we were able to find out anything about that. But then that was a very interesting game for like power ups because I agree. Like going to level 5 and saying, okay, now everyone has a +1 weapon is boring. That's why I always like the idea of giving you stuff that legitimately makes you more powerful or can make you more powerful, but stuff that can also have a drawback.
Yeah.
So like, I think one of them got like a talking sword, which constantly annoyed it every day. So he had to roll like a will save every day to make sure he wasn't annoyed by this thing. If he was annoyed, I think it caused like some minor penalties if he wanted to concentrate on something.
Yeah, I think the other thing, like, there's a legitimate thing though that having an item that you can't use to its full effect is incentive to alter your playstyle.
Yeah.
And alter how your character's doing things. Unfortunately, that's pretty hard in D&D.
I'm about to say, like, there's no real fluidity in D&D, really. There's no way to easily change, especially when you've got, like, a plan, because most people go with a plan of what they want to do, at least for 1 or 2 levels.
Yeah, most people have, like, the next 2 or 3 things planned out. I think that's partly because D&D gives you is designed now to give you something at basically every level. So you have an interesting choice most of the time. And when you don't have a choice, you've got something cool.
Yeah, no, definitely. But yeah, I'm still a massive fan of getting people weird and wonderful magic items. Like the amount of stories I could tell with the robe of useful items.
Oh God,
is really fun, and I love that kind of stuff, and I love how fun it makes a game when someone's like, I want to completely bugger over this part of the game, and it's just like, okay, that works, I guess.
I gave my players one of those at quite low level, so every so often they've got the usual utility items, but every so often it's let's pull off a patch to see what happens. And sometimes it's like we found some money, and sometimes it's like we found a pit. Okay, what the hell can we do with this? Because there's some.
The one where you can pick what you've got.
I don't think there's ever been one where you can do that. There's some utility stuff in there that you know. Anything else is a random roll.
Oh right, so you like your ladder and
like ladder and stuff, ladder, lanterns, that kind of thing. That's no.
You do know that's on the robe of useful items is a 5th level invention for Arcanist.
Yeah, I just gave it to the. Is it okay? I can see that being useful. Because there's I think it's like D100 or something, and there's all sorts from like a rowboat to a bag of money to a pit or a window. So suddenly, like if you're trapped in a cell, you might get lucky and roll a window, which you can just put on the wall and escape through. Yeah, or you might get a rowboat, and suddenly you're in a prison cell with a rowboat, which.
I mean, to be fair, you talk about the rowboat, but one of my players legitimately killed the boss with a rowboat. And to be fair, it depends how you interpret it. Like I interpreted the rules as the DM rolls a certain number of things, and those are just in the thing, isn't a random within the game process. But like, that's the thing; it just makes weird stuff happen, and that's what I love about D&D is when the weird stuff happens. And that's why I like the Artificer, because I think in some ways more than any other class, apart from maybe the casters who, you know, by nature of the fact they can manipulate time, space, and matter, they make weird stuff.
they tend to they've pretty much they've gotten a bit better in fifth ed, but casters have pretty much always had a lot more I can just make things happen button. Whereas
Yeah.
fighters traditionally they hit things with swords. If it's not hitting a thing with a sword, they're a bit limited. Whereas casters, even most obviously the higher end where they get wish and can just pretty much do whatever they want. There's all kinds of crazy stuff they can do.
But yeah,
one of my favourite powers from 13th Age was the Rogue Swashbuckle ability. What it did is, you could only use it once per. Can't remember. I think you had to spend momentum for it as well. So it was like something you could only use rarely. But what it did was there was some stuff about freeform casting, right? And it basically when you just get to use the rules for doing freeform magic stuff for doing your physical actions. So you want to run up that wall, backflip off it onto the chandelier, so the chandelier flips up, hits the boss under the chin, which you're going to swing underneath and stab him. That chandelier wasn't here earlier, but it is now. It gave you that sort of explicitly letting you redefine bits of the room, so everything just flowed into your coolness.
Yeah.
You basically got to go, this is my moment, GM, don't wreck it.
Yeah.
Which is such a nice ability.
Also, I like the fact that we've almost given the term chandeliering to whenever weird and wonderful stuff happens. Okay, that's the chandelier. I don't know if the person who invented chandeliers was just in 100 years, people are just gonna only use these to fall on top of people or swing across in action scenes. It's just no. They're way too awesome and dumb to not just make fun of and use in dumb, fun ways.
I mean, I can just imagine Louis XIV going, there's not enough sword fights. Put up more chandeliers.
That's cool. Alright.
That's why Versailles has so many.
Just trying to attract sword fighters and swashbucklers.
So, I think with that sort of very good discussion bit out of the way,
that was fun.
Do we want to talk about what we want to do for next arc, or what kind of things we're looking forward to?
Oh, right.
You're just I remember I'm doing a podcast now.
Yeah, I'd completely forgotten. I was just aren't we just talking about stuff and bitching about games? I was having fun with bitching about games. Right. So yeah. I don't want to do anything involving maps, because I've done loads of things involving maps.
Yeah, I agree. I don't want maps.
I'm currently writing a game that involves a map, and I've written about 4 games this year that have involved maps, including this Polisurgy. So I don't want to do another map game.
Okay.
No, I can agree with that. I personally, because most RPGs don't need maps. That's a thing. They don't need maps. I like more theatre of the mind type stuff myself. So, yeah, I think in terms of something I want to have avatars again.
You want a single avatar character for your player?
Yeah, as in I want to have a player character, as opposed to what we did with this one where we were, you were a city.
It was a city. Yeah.
How about 3? Are you cool with having multiple player characters?
I mean, that's an interesting idea, because honestly, one of the first con games I did was when we were playing this really weird, basically Hunger Games style game, and each of us had 3 characters to do stuff with. So that's certainly a good idea. It means you have to have a simpler character creation system, because otherwise it gets too complicated. We're trying to maintain 3 characters at the same time. But I think it's something you can do, certainly. But in my general thing, my thing is I want to be a player character again.
Cool. Okay, so discrete time periods. So time skips. So you got time skip period 1, time period 2, time period 3, or possibly more. I kind of want there to be at least 2 time periods, but not that sort of fluid continuum that Microscope has.
So when you say time periods, does that mean
stuff that happened in the past and stuff that's happening now or in the future?
Right. Okay. That seems like I'm wondering what we do with that, but that's an interesting idea. Certainly,
we could play them one after another. We could play bits from each interleaving. We could play them pretty freeform. We could do flashbacks, anything like that. As long as we've got one period that is then, and one period that is now.
And
Yeah.
Or at least, more than one time period, and they've got to be discrete. That's kind of what I want.
Makes sense. Chris, what are you looking for?
Okay. Yes. So if we, because I think this was something I suggested for the last one, which didn't quite come to be, but yeah, actually, kind of more on the standard side of like stats and characters and things, rather than sorry, rather than like the slightly more crazy experimental side. So at least we got. You sound like you're dying on
Chris.
We need to have at least some basis in normal things. Otherwise, we're going to end up with the RNG is like you must have half a deck of cards which has been chewed by rats.
You do know that if Purple had half a chance to do that, he would do that, right?
It's like, how many bees do you have in your mouth, Chris?
Like
insufficient bees, you succeed.
Like, we're talking about the same guy who literally made a system which was almost all about literally knowing the meaning of tarot cards.
You can at least look at the pictures for that one.
Yeah, but that's the thing. Like, he wanted to play it with knowing what they were. So, Weird and Wonderful is Purple's business.
I don't see why stat blocks are how to read. I'm fine. It's your thing. I don't get to say it.
Yeah,
so you want a stat block as opposed to a city map or similar. You want actual numbers on a page,
just like stats.
Yeah.
Yes, it is.
That makes sense, to be honest. That also fits quite well with me wanting to play a player character again.
Yeah. I want to play a list of nouns.
I am the noun. I'm trying to remember what noun is now. Apple.
I'm IB Chime Wand.
Honestly, I'm also quite a fan of. Maybe this is because I played Fate for a while, so I still do have a love for it, even though I'm not, enamored with it in terms of long-term campaigns. The idea of words meaning something like tags. Tags has always been an interesting idea to me. So, I think Pad by Apocalypse also makes quite good use of tags, either as equipment or as people.
They tend to be quite good as fairly generically as things you can use to have mechanics function in quite a wide variety of ways without getting too crunchy and rigid about it.
I think that might be a good thing to have, because you can still have a stat block and have tags. It's just that the tags have a named effect.
If you have a relevant tag or a relevant tag is in play, add 1d6 or something. Like I say, it's a fairly...
Unknown Armies, the second edition, had each stat you gave a name. So you wrote you wrote your stat, and then you wrote the number, and then you wrote the description.
All right.
So, if you had a low body score, you could have ill, or chronically ill, or you could have obese or similar, and you'd have the same body score, but it'd mean something different.
Yeah.
It didn't. It was more just for fiction reasons, but if you had a high body score, you could be professional strongman, or you could just be gym every day, or you could be wiry. You could have a ridiculously high body score and just be really, really wiry, or just an apps you just have ridiculously good health. You're not necessarily strong or whatever, but
for something like that, it does kind of help tie you into the world in a more specific way, as you say, rather than just I'm strong. It's yeah, I'm good at enduring, or yeah, I'm obviously buff.
You
That
got
kind of
skills on
thing.
top of that, but for things your skills didn't fit, you had a better chance trying to blag it as an easy check. If
Which is
you,
kind of
yeah, there was like different levels of skill check, and you'd have a lot more of an easier time blagging something as a lower level skill check if your stat descriptor was right. So that's
kind of a bit similar to specialties in Exalted and World of Darkness stuff, but
it didn't
you get
explicitly
them.
have dice.
But it's kind of you get them for free, and they give you a bit of a
Yeah.
mechanical boost.
I mean,
yeah.
law specialties are quite fun in Exalted. There's a mechanic for introducing facts into the setting. So you go, oh, it's a this, and if you've got an appropriate law specialty, the GM is encouraged to set a difficulty and let you make a roll. Obviously, if it contradicts something, then you don't. But instead of going, what do I know about that rock feature? You can go, oh, that's the ruins of a first age colossus. You know, they were built out of stone, and they marked important sites. And you can then go, the GM will go, that's a difficulty 10 roll, and if you make the difficulty 10, then you've got it.
Okay, so like a more structured way of creating a
bits of setting.
Environment changing thing.
I mean, is that something like? I mean, we're going to have to do that if we're doing multiple time periods and we're playing in the future, then go back to the past.
Oh no, I
That
agree.
kind
It's
of-
just because so I've run games where I suck at world building. So I tend to build games where I give a skeleton of a world and people, via their backstories, for example, fill it in. So this is just a more structured way, more like in-play way of doing it. So I think it's a fun idea.
So we have stat blocks, player characters.
Love the way we have to actually have that as a specific thing.
I'm just glad no one said GM yet.
Oh yeah, that's one thing I wanted to ask was, do we want to do a GM-less system? Do we want to have a multi-GM system? Do we
If
want
it's not something
GM?
you really want to push in, then let's see how the game evolves.
Yeah, I'm happy because we've done systems that have basically all three now. You know, we've had multi-GM, GM-less, and GM.
I really like the multiple GM one, but yes. So we have that, and we have multiple time periods.
Okay.
Do people want to add anything else? Because to be honest, player characters and stat blocks don't massively inspire me.
I was about to say, like,
they're restrictions rather than inspirations, I think.
Well, yeah, so one of the things I wanted to ask was, do we have an idea of what setting we want to do? Is setting something we want to focus on? Because so far we've been doing fairly setting-neutral games, or like genre-neutral games. So either a setting or a genre.
Yeah, do you want to go for a genre?
My personal thing is Wild West. I love Wild West.
Okay.
So
it's different, not done that.
Yeah, it's fun.
I mean, if you want to do different periods of time, you could do
Western's fine. Western's fine. I don't think we need to.
Oh no, but this is just one other idea. Is because you want to do 3 separate time periods, you could do before the apocalypse, during the apocalypse, after the apocalypse. Because then
I think we should leave the what the time periods are for when we're designing the game. I kind of want to answer that question as a group.
That's fair.
But yeah, having a Western theme / influence in it is pretty cool.
Yeah, I like the idea of it being before, during, after a something, either a battle or something. But
I think that's going to turn up anyway, though.
I think so, but I think that's just me like saying out now what I think the time period thing will manifest as.
Cool. So we got Western down. Chris, do you want to put another thing to inspire rather than restrict?
No violence would probably be restrictive, wouldn't it?
Yes.
Or at least you could say violence is not the focus.
Yeah. Because that's depending on quite how we work with the time frame thing.
I was about to say, if it's Wild West, it generally tends to lean to more violence.
It's more the fact that if you have if you know your character is alive in the future and still has all their limbs and whatnot.
Don't worry about that.
Obviously kind of puts
Seriously, don't worry
limitations on
about
what
that.
you can
That
narratively
works
declare in the
itself out.
past.
Yeah. But I like the idea that maybe not an over-reliance on violence, like maybe talking to people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Violence is not the intended answer.
Yeah, violence isn't always the answer.
Okay, so join us next episode for a game where violence isn't the answer. It's a Western, and it's across multiple time periods, and they may have player characters or some crap like that. Goodbye!
See you later!
Bye.